Hey, it's Tim here. In this video, I want to do a quick roundup of all the things announced at the Tableau keynote. There was a lot covered, and I want to try and keep this as brief as possible. So if you want to jump around, be sure to look at the timestamps in the video and in the description below to jump around if there's a particular section you want to know more about. But nonetheless, let's get stuck in. Now, if you missed it, be sure to check out the live stream. It's currently being uploaded to YouTube. Yesterday, I did a live stream with Ravi. We went through the whole entire conference in real time, and so you can see our sort of honest reactions to a lot of the features that were announced, and also see some of the comments and suggestions that were coming from the Tableau community at a wider level. So be sure to check out that live stream as well. And of course, if you haven't had a chance to watch the whole entire keynote, of course, please do try and watch that. It's always valuable to sort of watch it for yourself and get your own opinions rather than just watching a summary like this. But if you're pressed for time and your summary is all you need, you're in the right place. Now, at a high level, what I did, I went through the keynote twice. I went through it in the live stream and I went through it again after the conference had sort of settled down a bit and people were into sessions they wanted to watch. I wrote down all the headline announcements. You can kind of see them here in my notebook. I don't often do this, but I felt like I had to do this to just get a higher level perspective of what was going on. And the best way I could summarize this keynote is that Tableau were essentially in this keynote extending the boundaries of the Tableau platform. Essentially, a lot of the key milestones, the key features, the key groups they were talking about were essentially a statement, in my opinion, of how they're expanding the platform to include better products, better capabilities, and essentially serve more people. Those were sort of the three highlight messages. And so what I want to do is go through some of those key areas. Essentially, these four areas are as follows. There's Tableau for Slack, there's Tableau Business Science, there's data management at scale, and lastly, the Tableau economy, aka the Tableau Exchange, which is a new service they're going to be launching, and I think it's actually already live. But nevertheless, these were the four highlight moments. You can hopefully see them up on screen. Let's go through each of them individually. So Tableau sort of started with the features here by talking about Tableau for Slack. Essentially, a lot of these features are things that you should already be aware of. They were announced in 21.3, and so for many people, maybe you haven't had a chance to play with these features, maybe you haven't upgraded to this version yet, so you might not have seen these features. And so Tableau always do a good job of reminding you of what's already available today, and they sort of did that at the beginning of this announcement with Slack. But what was really interesting about this announcement is that they also showed the additional ways they're going to be improving this capability over time, bringing technologies like Ask Data, Explain Data, being able to search Tableau Server or Tableau Online inside of Slack without having to leave Slack, essentially keeping your work where you do your work. So for people who use Slack, that's predominantly going to be in Slack, talking to people, talking to colleagues, and hooking into lots of different applications as Slack lets you do. Now, one of the things that was interesting in the live stream is that quite a few of our users use Microsoft Teams. And the interesting thing there is a lot of this capability seems native to Slack and seems to work better in Slack. And so the question was always, is this stuff going to support Microsoft Teams as well as it could? And at least initially, we got a response from Francois in the live stream that essentially, yes, these features will come to other platforms soon, probably via APIs. That's me assuming that, not exactly what Francois said. But nonetheless, it should be expected that these sorts of capabilities should be capable in other platforms, because not everyone uses Slack, not everyone uses Salesforce. And so for a lot of organizations, Teams is sort of the incumbent chat messaging system that they use. And so I'm looking forward to the day that we can finally say those things are coming. But alongside those, we also have other things like Einstein Analytics coming to Slack. And so essentially expect Slack to become the conversational platform for Tableau. This is where most of the ad hoc sort of query, natural language based analytics is going to be happening for Tableau. Of course, you can do this stuff inside of the Tableau platform. Ask Data, Explain Data already exists in the core product, but essentially this is bringing that capability to all analysts in every organization. So that's pretty much a summary of that. I haven't covered every detail. Of course, go check out the keynote to find out more, but that's pretty much the first one, Tableau for Slack. The next thing to cover is Tableau Business Science. Essentially, this is Tableau's first attempt, I should say, at trying to enable business users with AI, machine learning, and modeling capabilities. Now, this is always a bold move because I always think that in some respects, there is a huge gap between the data sets that we work with every single day in an organization and being able to sort of capitalize on machine learning and AI with those data sets. As you will know, lots of data sets require things like data prep. Sometimes the data quantity is just not there to be doing things like modeling. And of course, this capability requires some inherent awareness of traditional data sets. And so a lot of the business science capabilities we were seeing, I think, lean heavily on Salesforce. It's not exactly clear if these technologies are going to work beyond the Salesforce platform in other data sets, in other databases as such, but you should expect it to work very heavily inside of the Salesforce platform because, of course, that's where Tableau is present today. And of course, that is Tableau's parent company. So the modeling capabilities were really interesting. They very much borrow the interface from Tableau Prep. They live in the browser in something like Tableau Online or Tableau Server, but they are not necessarily a part of Tableau Prep. It's just an interface from Tableau Prep. And some of those capabilities do find themselves in Tableau Prep through things like calculations. So it looks like a familiar interface. It looks like a familiar thing that Tableau have built. It's borrowing a lot of thoughts and innovation from the existing products, but in essence, it's its own standalone environment. You'll go online, you'll get a model, you'll start to set it up. And as you can see here on the screenshots, it's a fairly sort of straightforward process. What I always say with these things is that it takes a lot to understand what each of these steps is doing. So you can't just assume that every business user can open up this browser tab and start clicking things and get some AI insights. I think you have to know your data set very well. You have to know the weaknesses and strengths of your data set. And this is always not easy to sort of figure out just by looking at metadata or just by processing the data and finding out a couple of sort of statistical variables for that data set. I think you always have to have some sort of innate understanding of how the data has been collected, and that's not always available to the business user. So it's going to be interesting to see how Tableau expands this out. But Tableau Business Science is very much here to say, one thing I did say on the live stream is that essentially, look, Tableau has to start somewhere. They have to put the markers in the ground because, of course, if they wait for this to become a mature product, they'll be late to the game. So yes, people like you and me who are really sort of on the bleeding edge of Tableau, this doesn't feel like a mature product. But the point here is that by starting now over the next few years, I think Tableau can develop something really useful and really hone in on what works and what doesn't work. And they kind of have to do that in public. So the feature's here. Let's start using it and let's start critiquing it as much as we can so we can make it a better product. And hopefully Tableau can find the niche that it's going to do very well in this particular capability. The next one was data management at scale. Now, the data management add-on has been sort of one of those things that's been a little bit difficult to swallow for some Tableau customers because essentially it's an add-on and you have to pay on top of your Tableau licensing. And also the pricing has made some people a little bit upset because essentially it's not priced based on the number of users that are actually using the data management capabilities. It's priced based on the number of users on the entire platform that you've deployed. So it's a little bit tricky. And of course, the pricing does change from time to time. So it's also a moving target. Sometimes you think you understand the pricing and then over time the pricing changes and things move around and it gets a little bit hard to follow. But Tableau's continued to show that it's serious about investing into this platform by adding yet more capabilities. Of course, the first one is virtualized connections. These essentially allow you to create data sources and data connections in a central place on Tableau server and then democratize those connections widely across the organization. This is useful in two respects. Number one, it means you don't have all these data connections replicated inside of workbooks and only living inside of workbooks. You have them in a central place and people can use those to essentially connect to data. It also enables something else which they talked about today, which is a centralized row-level security. Essentially, using Tableau Server and Tableau Online as a centralized platform for controlling row-level security at the point that a user queries data. Essentially, they demoed this capability of having security policies. And I sort of think of this in a similar way to AWS security policies, which are quite an advanced capability. I don't think this is quite there yet, but nonetheless, it sort of shows a lot of promise. And if they continue to develop this over the years, I think this is going to prove to be a really, really powerful feature because row-level security is always one of those things where you have to go out and get that white paper on the topic and then try and figure out how to do it best. And if you can just come up with a set of row or column-based policies based on a particular capability or particular groups in Tableau Server, or even particular variables inside of your data set, it's going to make it really dynamic and flexible. And the best thing about this is you don't have to go and redeploy them every time you build a new workbook. You can just simply take the policy that applies to a particular data set and maybe even replicate it across data sets. I think that's going to be really, really powerful. The other thing they talked about is the capability to synchronize metadata to the Tableau catalog. If you're not familiar, the Tableau catalog is essentially Tableau's metadata store. It goes around Tableau Server and Tableau Online, capturing the metadata from lots of different data sources, all the way down to calculations and how they're written and the comments put inside of those calculations, all the way up to databases and tables that are connected in those databases. And what they essentially announced is this capability to do a two-way sync between other metadata stores in in businesses. They had an example on screen. I'll put it up here, syncing to Tableau and vice versa. So essentially you don't have to do this work twice if you already have a system that does this. This is really useful because you could essentially centrally now control your metadata using some of the more dedicated metadata stores that exist already in the market. So this was really, really cool. They finished off this section by talking a bit about Tableau Prep, and they talked about prep flows being published to Tableau Public. Now, this is an interesting move. This isn't quite the ability to use Tableau Prep in Tableau Public. You still need to have a creator license to be able to do this. Where this comes in handy is when we start talking about the next announcement, when we talk about the Tableau economy and the Tableau exchange. But just sticking to Tableau Prep, it was really interesting to see them now start to expand Tableau Prep beyond the creators that we see today. By putting it on public, you're now giving creators essentially the ability to showcase solutions to common problems. And it also makes it very easy for people to share solutions using a public platform. Essentially, you can build an example in Tableau Prep and then post it up to public and then share it with others rather than having to package these workflows and send them around in Dropbox and so on and so forth. So it makes Tableau Public more of a home for the Tableau product, and it sort of saves this activity happening elsewhere. I think it also gives Tableau some insights into how we're using Tableau Prep. You got to remember, Tableau Public is essentially their test bed. It's always been a test bed. They've always deployed features on there to see how they work, and they've used it to learn about what we're building. They can go into some of these workbooks and look at the metadata. So this ability of being able to publish things up to Tableau Public is actually a really clever move, because it allows Tableau to start to see what problems are we solving and how are we solving them, and how can Tableau make those features better. And so this is a smart move in lots of different ways, but it, for the typical user, it's going to make it easier to work with Tableau Prep more generally and share things as we go on. Now, the other thing they announced is Prep extensions. Much like you have extensions for desktop, we're now going to have the capability to build extensions for Tableau Prep. So this will allow us to, I think, hopefully bring in data sources that maybe are difficult to work with, extensions that do specific things using R and Python capabilities that, of course, Tableau Prep does support. And so I think this is going to be interesting. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I don't know what people are thinking and what they're going to build. So be sure to check out some of the news about this. I'm sure they'll be covered in Tableau conference sessions as well. So be sure to check that out. If you'd like to see a video on it, of course, you know what to do. Let me know in the comments, and we'll make something on that very soon. Now, I've deliberately saved the last, and I think the best announcement till last. Tableau announced something called the Tableau Exchange. And in the process of talking about the Tableau Exchange, they were generally talking about something called the Tableau economy. Now, the Tableau economy is a super interesting move. I think it's a genius move because essentially in one file sweep, they've essentially found a way to monetize the Tableau community, Tableau Public, and all the energy that happens in the community and bring it inside of their platform, while still enabling people, I hope, to be able to benefit from this. And so at the moment today, what happens is people create Tableau Public vizzes, they might create prep flows that are published, there's extensions over there, there's data connectors over there, there's an extension gallery somewhere else. The world of Tableau is just spread across so many different places. And the problem with that is it makes it hard to find people who are doing great things. And so what Tableau have done here is they've started by thinking of this as an economy of people. You've got authors, you've got Tableau partners, and then you've got consumers, people who want to find this stuff and just get their work done. And essentially what they're trying to do is to create a marketplace. Essentially, they're calling it the exchange. And this is where they're going to hopefully in the future give creators and authors and partners the ability to create assets that people can deploy. They're starting off with very simple examples. They're taking things that you've maybe seen before, dashboard starters, they're renaming those to Tableau accelerators. Accelerators being dashboard templates essentially that you can deploy. It's kind of confusing because there's a feature in development at the moment called dashboard acceleration, which is a completely different thing. So hopefully they try and fix that by renaming the acceleration to something else. But nonetheless, it's super interesting to see how this is sort of developing. And I think this is going to be a really, really interesting move in years to come. I don't think this is going to be something where, today you need to drop what you're doing and build something for the exchange. But I do think as they start to build out parts of this ecosystem and things start to gain momentum, you'll start to see new and innovative use cases for Tableau only exist in this exchange, because essentially the exchange is how they're going to try and incentivize, I think, partners and people in the community who maybe have great ideas and want to be able to benefit by maybe sharing those ideas or even selling those ideas. Who knows? If you're the kind of person who's a creator in typical economies, in most economies, even content creator economies, you do get rewarded in some small way for your effort, whether it's recognition, whether it's the ability to find a job. All of these things are sort of really, really important. And so that links to something else they announced, which is a Hire Me button for Tableau Public. This actually came earlier on in the announcement, but I've put it here because I think this is the most meaningful place to do it. Tableau is essentially bringing all of this under one platform. So in my view, I think the Tableau public profile is going to become a super important place to make sure you focus energy on, not now, but maybe in the next year or two. I think start building up your Tableau public profile, because I'm fairly certain the Tableau Exchange is going to want to see your Tableau public profile, and your public profile might become your global identity for all things Tableau. And I think it's going to be a really, really powerful way to work in the Tableau ecosystem. Now, the other thing that I think they snuck into this section that had no right to be here was the ability to embed the whole entire web authoring experience anywhere you want. And this is interesting because this is essentially an expansion of the embedding capabilities you can already do today. But they essentially said this: you don't need to install Tableau in order to use Tableau, and you can embed Tableau inside of your application. Just think about that for 1 second. Typically, all you've been able to do today is embed dashboards in particular places. This requires an author to have already built them. What they said in this keynote is essentially that you don't even need to install Tableau to build a dashboard in the first place. You can essentially create an application that includes Tableau as the analytical platform where you build all these things. And when you're done, boom, there you have it. Whatever you've built there and then is embedded inside of your application. And I thought that was super interesting. Now, the details for this need to be sort of fleshed out. I'm not a developer at all. I have a good friend of mine, Andre. I'll put a link to his profile in the description. Check him out because he does work with all this kind of stuff. And so once the APIs are out and once things have started working really, really well, I'm sure he'll be sort of trying to find out what the boundaries of this capability are. But nonetheless, I think this is a super interesting move because I also think this means that we're very, very close to the world, which I think Tableau have been talking about before, where you can do Tableau entirely in the browser. This to me feels like a statement that they are getting closer to that finish line. So hopefully by the end of next year, I'm going to say it now, by the end of next year, we should be in a place where Tableau is entirely in the browser and you no longer need to install Tableau to use Tableau. You can use it on Tableau server, you can use it on Tableau online, but I think they'll still persist the installers because in some organizations, that's just how these things are done. So that's going to be an interesting transition. I think next year we're going to see that sort of play out. We'll see companies sort of battle with this challenge as well. And so let's wait and see what happens there. The last thing, Tableau Actions and Salesforce Flows. So this was sort of a weird one because they started talking by talking about actions that we use in Tableau, dashboard actions, set actions, parameter actions. And then it sort of really quickly pivoted into a completely different capability, which is actions that extend beyond Tableau itself. The best way to think of this is, let's say you're looking at a dashboard and you see that there's a problem in a particular part of the business. Let's say you found a product and it's showing you that the supply issues for this product are, prevalent and you need to sort them out. Tableau are demoing a capability where you can essentially click on that particular product and you can take action on that problem as you see it. So essentially being able to trigger other workflows outside of Tableau just by building integrations into your dashboards. This is important because one of the biggest problems with dashboards has always been you go to the dashboard to learn what's happening, you find a problem by exploring the data, but that last bit, taking action, has always been really, really tough. And in the past, the simplest way to sort of fix that has been write back to database. That's sort of been the generic request from the Tableau community. Can we write back to the database? That's very that's not really doing what we want it to do, because sometimes actions require more than just a row in a database. Sometimes action require triggering whole processes, and some of those processes already exist in automation capabilities. If you look at something like Zapier, imagine being able to trigger a Zapier workflow to do a bunch of different things when you see a problem inside of a Tableau dashboard. Those are the kind of hooks and integrations that Tableau are thinking of integrating. And so they talked about actions, but generally they then focused it right back down to something called Salesforce Flows. So of course, the first thing that's going to get this capability is Salesforce. And essentially what I think you'll be able to do, again, it's not entirely clear, but what I think you'll be able able to. And what they showed is that you'll be able to trigger Salesforce flows from dashboard actions. And then hopefully in the future, this will trigger other actions in other ecosystems as well. So super exciting, super interesting, but that's pretty much it from this particular section. So that's pretty much everything from the conference keynote. I've just bunged everything on screen here as a review so you can see everything in one place. It's super interesting. Now, the additional context here is that we still haven't had devs on stage. And the way to think of this is I think the keynote is about expanding the boundaries of what Tableau can do. And then devs on stage is about filling the gaps of what's essentially left when you expand the boundaries. So devs on stage, I think, is going to be the place where people like you and me traditionally go to find out what's going to make my workflow faster next year. What is Tableau working on in 21.4, 22.1, all of those features, and how are those going to help me do my work better? And so essentially, what you should always think of this keynote and devs on stage is this is what Tableau is working on in the next year. There's always the caveat that stuff doesn't turn up. That has happened in the past. We've seen stuff at conference and it's not turned up. So don't take any of this as word that this is going to happen, but nonetheless, and this is how it's all set up. Listen, thanks for watching. I'm going to cut this video here because I think I could go on for days about each and every one of these features. If you'd be interested in seeing a video about a particular thing I've mentioned today, let me know. There's obviously links in the description and the comments below, so be sure to check those out. And let me know if there's a particular topic you'd like me to cover in the future as well.